The Epic of Pushyamitara Shunga, Brahmin Warrior, Empire Builder. Prologue. The Cracks in an Empire. The 2nd century BCE was a time of profound transition in the Indian subcontinent. The Mauryan Empire, once the mightiest in Indian history under the stewardship of Chandragupta and the visionary Ashoka, had become a shell of its former glory. Following Ashoka's death, his successors were weak and ineffective, unable to manage the sprawling territories that stretched from the Himalayas to the southern peninsula. Brihadratha Maurya, the last Mauryan emperor, sat on the throne of Pataliputra, a ruler in name more than power. The court was rife with intrigue. The provinces had grown restive. Ambitious generals and governors eyed power. Among them stood a man who would reshape Indian history, a general, a Brahmin, and a man of deep strategic acumen, Pushyamitara Shunga. Chapter 1. The Making of Pushyamitara. Little is known about Pushyamitara's early life, but historical texts describe him as a Brahmin of the Shunga lineage, likely hailing from the region around Vidisha or Pataliputra. A devout follower of the Vedic tradition, he was trained not just in scriptures but also in the martial arts of warfare. He rose through the ranks of the Mauryan military, proving himself as a capable and disciplined commander. In time, he became the Senapati, commander-in-chief of the Mauryan army, a position of immense responsibility and proximity to the emperor. But even as he served faithfully, Pushyamitara watched with growing concern as the empire faltered. The centralized administration was decaying. Buddhist influence in politics and society had risen dramatically under Ashoka, and many Brahmins felt marginalized. Provinces like Punjab and the Deccan showed signs of rebellion. Foreign powers like the Indo-Greeks hovered beyond the borders. To Pushyamitara, the empire's decline was not merely political, it was a collapse of dharma, a disruption of the sacred order. Chapter 2. Regicide at the Parade Ground. The pivotal moment came during a grand military parade. The emperor, Brihadratha, was inspecting his troops with his trusted general by his side. But Pushyamitara had made his decision. In a swift, shocking motion, he drew his sword and decapitated the emperor in full view of the army. The act sent shockwaves through the capital. But the army, weary of weak leadership and already loyal to Pushyamitara, did not rebel. Instead, they accepted him as their new ruler. Thus ended the Mauryan dynasty, and from its ashes arose the Shunga dynasty, with Pushyamitara Shunga as its founder and first king in 185 BCE. Chapter 3. The Shunga Renaissance begins. Pushyamitara moved swiftly to consolidate his power. He crowned himself in accordance with Vedic rites, reviving Brahmanical traditions that had been overshadowed by the widespread patronage of Buddhism. The new king held 2 Ashvamedha yajnas, horse sacrifices, a rare and expensive ritual meant to establish sovereignty and divine legitimacy. His rule was marked by a revival of Hindu orthodoxy, with an emphasis on Vedic education, ritualism, Sanskrit learning, and temple building. The cultural shift was immense. While Buddhism remained a major force, Pushyamitara reasserted the primacy of Brahmanism in the political and spiritual life of India. Yet his actions sparked debate and controversy that continues to this day. Certain Buddhist texts, such as the Daivyavadana, accuse him of persecuting Buddhists and destroying monasteries, though archaeological evidence suggests this was not widespread or systematic. Pushyamitara's aim, more likely, was restoration, not repression. He sought to balance the religious landscape that had been dominated by Ashoka's patronage of Buddhism for decades. Chapter 4. Defending the homeland, the Yavana Wars. The most dramatic challenge of Pushyamitara's reign came from the northwest. The Indo-Greek kings, known as the Yavanas in Indian texts, had begun pushing into Indian territory following the decline of Mauryan power. Led by ambitious rulers like Demetrius I and Menander I Milander, they sought to expand their Hellenistic dominion into the fertile heartlands of India. The Yavanas were not mere raiders, they brought with them the legacy of Alexander the Great, an organized military, and a cosmopolitan culture. But Pushyamitara was no ordinary ruler. In fierce battles near Mathura, Ayodhya, and possibly Vidisha, the Shunga forces met the Indo-Greeks head-on. According to the Harshacharita by Banabhatta and inscriptions like the Ayodhya inscription, Pushyamitra and his descendants repelled these invasions and maintained the territorial integrity of the Shunga Empire. His successful defense of the Indian heartland was a turning point. Not only did it check Hellenistic expansion, but it also reasserted Indian sovereignty during a vulnerable period. Chapter 5. A complex ruler in a complex time. Despite his image as a traditionalist, Pushyamitra ruled over a culturally pluralistic society. Buddhist stupas like Sanchi and Bharat were expanded under Shunga patronage. His own son, Agnimitra, the next king, is the hero of Kalidasa's play, Malavakagnimitra, suggesting a rich and vibrant court culture. His administration revived the Panchayatan system, reinforced Varna, social order, and invested in public works. The Shunga coins and inscriptions show a blend of Greek, Mauryan, and indigenous Indian influences, reflecting a dynamic and diverse empire. Chapter 6. Legacy of a Brahmin king. Pushyamitra ruled for approximately 36 years, and his reign laid the foundation for the Shunga dynasty to rule for nearly a century. Though the dynasty would face constant threats, from the Satavahanas in the south, the Indo-Greeks in the west, and internal revolts, his leadership created a strong central state that could withstand these pressures. His legacy is often debated. Some see him as a reactionary who reversed Ashoka's progressive religious tolerance. Others see him as a savior who preserved Indian traditions from being overwhelmed by foreign influence. In truth, Pushyamitra Shunga was both a destroyer and a builder, a complex king in a complex time. He symbolizes the age-old tension in Indian history between tradition and reform, order and diversity, consolidation and expansion. Epilogue. The king who rewrote Dharma. Pushyamitra did not merely seize a throne, he rewrote the definition of kingship. His reign was a pivot point in Indian history, marking the end of a pan-Indian empire and the return to regionalism, but also a cultural consolidation that would echo in centuries to come. He was the last ruler in ancient India to successfully conduct a Vedic Ashvamedha yajna, the last to combine the sword of a general with the knowledge of a Brahmin. In him, India saw the warrior-scholar archetype come to life, resolute, ruthless when needed, but devoted to a vision of Dharma.